What is up, Brian here from Ballistic Tech, and today I'm super excited because we're talking sim racing gear again, and I have a completely new setup to share with you guys. This is my new setup that I'm going to be using from Thrustmaster, and I'm going to do a lot of separate videos on a lot of these different components and talk about them through probably 5 or 6 videos. But what I want to do here is talk about this setup, which I think is a pretty good sweet spot in the Thrustmaster ecosystem, in the scope of the entire Thrustmaster ecosystem, and just give you guys a better idea of which options you might want to look at in terms of the different price tiers and functionality if you're looking to go with Thrustmaster. So far into my sim racing journey, I've moved from playing mostly arcade-ish games on controller, and I've kind of upgraded to playing with a wheel and pedal set and getting a lot more into more hardcore sims like iRacing and Assetto Corsa. And to date, most of my experience has been with the Logitech lineup of wheels. I've done videos on the G920 and G29, as well as multiple videos on the G923. And in those videos, one of the most common questions I get is how do those wheels compare with the Thrustmaster lineup? Now, full disclosure, Thrustmaster did send these products to me for the purpose of making content. They didn't specify what type of content I needed to make. They didn't tell me what things I could or could not say. So everything I say about these products are my words, as is the case with all the stuff on my channel. Overall, my goal isn't to sell you on any type of product in particular, but rather to give you all the information that you need to make the best buying decision that you can. One of the things I think is absolutely fantastic about Thrustmaster, if you're comparing it to Logitech, is that Thrustmaster has this deep ecosystem which allows you to have a lot of customization to get the driving experience you want, and it also gives you a pretty, well laid out upgrade path, so you can start with lower tier stuff and upgrade as you go, and as they release new products, you can also swap those in as well. This is particularly great for console racers, where everything has to run through the wheelbase, so things like the pedals, accessories like a handbrake or a shifter, and they all have to run through the wheelbase and connect to the console with one USB cable, whereas on PC you can have a lot more flexibility in mixing and matching brands. Most peripherals from Thrustmaster allow you to hook them up straight via USB, which is great, but for the console guys, having an ecosystem is a really beneficial thing. So let's start out talking about wheelbases. Especially for console players, this is going to be the hub for your whole setup. As I mentioned before, it's also usually the most expensive component of most people's setups, and honestly it gives you kind of the most feedback in terms of immersion with the driving experience, because you're getting the force feedback and it's what's allowing you to control the car, obviously. So here Thrustmaster has sent me the T300 Servo base. This is the PlayStation and PC compatible version of the wheelbase from that tier. There's also the TX, which is the Xbox and PC version. And a quick note for console folks, all of the officially licensed peripherals like wheels and pedals that were compatible with the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 are backwards compatible on the next gen console. So you can use this wheelbase and all of the wheelbases from last generation on both the Xbox Series X and S and the PS5. Of course, that has to do with their respective platform that they're supported on. All right, so now let's take a deeper dive into all of the wheelbases that Thrustmaster offers. I'm going to divide these up into 4 different tiers. We've got the lowest tier, for lack of a better term. We've got what I call the entry-level tier, the mid-level tier, which is where the T300 and TX appear, and then we've got the top tier, and I'm going to talk about all of those individually, starting with the lowest tier. Now, if you're watching a very long video about sim racing, I'm going to go ahead and say that you're probably going to want to skip over this lowest tier. This is Thrustmaster's lowest budget offering in the Ferrari 458 and the T80. They're around $100. So I would kind of put these into the category of people who mainly like to use arcade-ish type driving games, and maybe people who are just dabbling and don't want to spend very much money. You just want to barely dip your toes, see if you like it, and look to upgrade later. I think one of these wheels could be a pretty good gift for maybe someone like a kid in your life who's showing some interest in driving games, and you want to give them something so that they can experience what it feels like to use a wheel and pedals, but you're not sure if they're going to like it. You're not sure if it's worth spending $200, $300, or upwards of $800 on a setup for them. You can get something like this for like $50 used. I've seen them on Craigslist and on Facebook. See if they show some interest, and then if they start to advance to a point where they would like something else and you think that it's a good idea, you can pick up something and upgrade them. In terms of specs, the Ferrari 458 version of the wheel is for Xbox and PC. Of course, has that Ferrari license kind of form factor. So if you're a big Ferrari fan, or the person you're buying it is a Ferrari fan, that might be appealing to you. The T80 is the version that's compatible with PC and PlayStation. And as we look at the specs a little bit closer, you'll start to see why I don't really recommend these for anybody who's kind of getting more seriously into sim racing and going beyond kind of more arcade-ish driving games. It doesn't feature any force feedback. It's got 240 degrees of rotation, which is pretty limiting. It does have bungee cord centering, but that's pretty outdated these days. It comes with the most basic 2-pedal set that Thrustmaster makes. It's all plastic, and I don't think people are going to enjoy that over a long time. These pedals are hard attached to them, so you can't upgrade to more advanced pedals down the line, nor can you add different peripherals like a handbrake or a shifter. So really the only upgrade path from this tier is to move up to the next tier, in which you can swap out some of these components. But really, I'm going to recommend at a bare minimum you try to hop in at this next tier I'm going to be talking about in a second. One quick thing I want to note is that if my views or opinions on where you should come into the market or what the sweet spot is don't align with yours and or don't align with your budget, please don't take offense to that. I want everybody to be included in sim racing. So if you can only pick up something like the T80 at $100, then by all means do that, use it, enjoy it. I don't want to be exclusive in sim racing. I'm just noting that I think a lot of people watching this video, doing a lot of research, are trying to optimize where their money is and trying to decide between a lot of the higher tier stuff. So that's just my opinion, but by all means, get into sim racing at whatever price point you can. So this next tier I'm talking about includes the TMX, T150, TMX Pro, and T150 Pro. And I'm gonna go ahead and say that you go for the pros if you're looking at this variant or this tier at all. The non-pro versions come with basically the same 2-pedal set that comes with the lowest tier, and they're mostly plastic construction, although there is a version that has, I think, metal pedal faces on them. But I'm gonna say that they're probably gonna be limiting. If you really want to get more into sim racing, try to get the pro versions of these, which come with a version of the T3PA pedals. These include 3 different pedals, and they have things like a conical mod on them, which gives you a much better feel for the brakes. And then you can also look into the T-LCMs as an upgrade to that. So definitely go for the pro version and skip over the regular version if you can. It does cost a little bit more. The regular versions are around $200 MSRP and the pros are $250, but that that $50 is well worth it in my opinion, getting you the extra pedal and better feeling brakes. The T150 is the PlayStation and PC compatible version of the wheel at this tier, where the TMX is the Xbox and PC version. You'll notice that scheme kind of carries on throughout, as does one of the most basic specs, which is wheel rotation. That's the only difference generally in a tier between the Xbox and PlayStation version in terms of their core specs. Generally, the PlayStation version has 1080 degrees of wheel rotation and the Xbox version has 900, which I don't think is enough of a differentiator for you to choose one or another. To be honest, 900 is more than enough for most games. If you're playing more racing style simulators in games, then you're rarely going to use that much unless you're in more of a production style car. If you're doing some driving simulators like Euro trucking, then having 900 degrees is kind of important, but again, 900 is generally going to be enough unless you're using some kind of farm equipment which has 1080, but I'm not that familiar with that segment of games. So in terms of upgrade ability, you can't swap out the wheel rims on this tier of wheelbases just yet, but you do have the option to upgrade the pedals to their RJ12 connector, and you can also put in different elements like a shifter and or a handbrake, which offers you a little bit of upgradability. So I'd say if you're looking at this tier, if you can save up for the next tier, definitely do that. And if you can't, you can get in with this tier and upgrade your pedals, get a shifter, get a handbrake, and then eventually you can jump up to the next tier, which is going to include the T300 and TX. For some other specs that might be of interest to you, it does feature a 280mm or around 11-inch rim, which is kind of a standard smaller size rim. The sensor in this is 12-bit, featuring 4096 steps of resolution. It is using brushed motors, and the torque is around 2 Newton meters. The drive system on this tier is a little unique. It features a hybrid gear and belt system. Gear driven wheels, kind of like the Logitech G920 and G29, are known for being able to slightly, in a way, be able to produce certain type of vibro-tactile stuff like curbs and bumps in the road a little bit better, just because of the way the gearing works. The backlash can kind of reproduce those a little bit better, giving you more of a kind of vibration feel through the wheel. Whereas belts are generally a lot quieter. They often have a lot more torque, but they have a little bit of a hard time reproducing some of the kind of more vibration-y feelings that you can get on a geared wheel. Again, things like driving over curbs and road effects and things like that. There's nothing really that stands out on this tier other than the price. Again, if you can move up to the next tier by saving up, I definitely recommend you do that. But on this tier, I do like that you can upgrade different peripherals, like using the T-LCM pedals, as well as getting a handbrake and or a shifter. All right, and now we get into the tier that features this wheelbase, the T300, and I'm gonna call that the mid tier. And I think this is the sweet spot in the Thrustmaster lineup in terms of offering a lot of cool features that you don't get in the lower tiers, while not breaking the bank. You can easily get in with a setup in this tier for below $500. The T300 is the variant that is compatible on PlayStation and PC, and the TX is the version which is compatible on Xbox and PC. As I already mentioned, you can get these standalone as just the wheelbase, and then buy the rest of the components, or if you're looking to upgrade from a previous tier, you can buy the wheelbase standalone as an option too. This of course does feature force feedback, and it also is the first tier which has the Thrustmaster quick release. It's not the quickest release, but it does allow you to remove these either stock or one of the add-on rims and swap them on, which is an absolutely great ability. You can customize your driving experience based on the wheel you're driving. If you're switching between different games or different cars in games, and you can have a circular shaped wheel if you're using more kind of production or GT cars that have those types of wheels. And if you're doing kind of open wheelers or playing F1, then you can go with something like the open wheel. And they do actually have a Ferrari licensed F1 wheel, and they've been teasing a new F1 wheel, which should be hopefully coming out within the next month or two. In terms of pricing, the wheelbase MSRP is around $250. I was able to see it on Amazon for around $230, and it's been on sale for even lower than that. So that's your kind of, I guess, lowest level pricing that you can get in on this tier for. Then they have what I like to call standard bundles, like the 300 RS and 300 GT, and those have a more basic wheel rim. Those are going to be anywhere from around $350 to $400. And then they have some bundles with some of the add-on wheels already included, like the leather edition and an Alcantara edition, and those are going to be anywhere from $400 to $500. It does also work with the Thrustmaster handbrakes and shifters. Of course, you can plug them straight in to the wheelbase, and if you're on PC, you can also take those and plug them in individually on via USB. Some of the other specs: this is the first tier, which features a 16-bit Hall effect magnetic sensor, which gives you 65,000 steps of resolution. So a lot more resolution there in this tier than you get with the other tiers, which utilize like optical and potentiometer based sensors. This features a dual belt driven system, which compared to gear system and hybrid systems is really quiet, which is nice. It's also very smooth compared to gear and hybrid systems. That dual belt system, in combination with a higher powered motor, is going to give you about 4 Newton meters of torque. For comparison, the previous tier had about 2 Newton meters of torque, and all of the Logitech wheels currently out on the market have about 2 Newton meters of torque as well. So this is in the realm of 2 times that. A quick note on force feedback and torque. Some people like to judge and use the torque numbers as, a pure representation of whether or not one wheel is better than another. I don't think that's the case. A lot of it has to do with how the force feedback is actually delivered to your hands, how the drivers are integrating with the games. And my main thing about torque and what increased torque gives you is more dynamic range. If you have 2 Newton meters of torque, you have a smaller range to work with in terms of being able to produce kind of more constant spring forces when you're going through a corner and you're feeling the G's to the wheel, or you're going through a compression zone and the wheel really kind of strengthens up, and also being able to produce things like bumps in the road. So if you have a lower range of torque because you have less Newton meters, then it's going to be hard to mix those signals. So again, I definitely recommend this as the sweet spot in the current lineup. If you're looking to try to maximize your money, I'd say come in here. If you can, find a bundle or look to immediately upgrade to the T-LCM pedals. We'll talk about them in just a second. So the next tier is what I'm going to call the top tier. This is kind of the flagship tier for Thrustmaster's current lineup, and all of these wheels will have basically all the stuff the previous tier of wheels had, with a lot of incremental and nice to have improvements like stronger motors and external PSU, better motor cooling, and they also feature generally more metal in their construction, making them a bit more robust. Like previous tiers, you can buy them standalone as just the wheelbase, but a lot of them are going to come with one of the add-on wheels attached. In this tier, we have 3 different wheels, each which are aimed at a different platform, but it's notable that all 3 are compatible with PC. So if you're on PC, you can determine which one you want based on the feature set and or the price that you're able to get it at. One big differentiator in this tier is the TGT. It features a transducer built into the base of it. Unfortunately, that transducer only works with Gran Turismo Sport, but if you're on PlayStation and that is kind of your game of choice, that transducer is going to be able to reproduce things like engine sounds, tire scrubbing, going over curbs, and give you just a little bit more of an immersive feeling while you're playing Gran Turismo Sport. The TGT is actually the sort of official esports wheel for Gran Turismo Sport, so at all the tournaments they're generally using that TGT wheel. The wheel rim has a nice Gran Turismo logo on it, and it's actually somewhat unique in that it, out of all the wheel rims, I think is the best in terms of the total number of inputs it has on it. It has like thumbsticks, it has numerous rotaries, it has, I think, a total of like 24 buttons, whereas a lot of the other wheels from Thrustmaster max out at around 20 or 17. The TSPC is somewhat unique in that it's the only wheel only supported for a single platform, and that is PC as the name implies. The TSXW is pretty much functionally identical to the TSPC, except for we still do have that difference there, and that the Xbox compatible version, the TXW, only has 900 degrees of rotation, whereas the TSPC has 1080. I haven't unfortunately used any of these wheels for any great amount of time. I've tried them out at a trade show, but I haven't had them at my desk or my rig to use them for an extended period, so I can't give any kind of experiential notes about what the force feedback is, but generally they are considered to be better than the previous tier, delivering more power. I think they are up to 6 or 7 Newton meters of torque. The force feedback technology and the drivers are supposed to be improved with new different technologies to optimize the delivery of force feedback to your hands. They also feature a field-oriented control driver system, which kind of drives the motor in this 3-phase different manner. If you're familiar with things like quadcopters and drones and electric skateboards, you might be a little bit familiar with the benefits of field-oriented control. To sum things up in terms of the wheelbases, you've got 4 tiers. I'm going to recommend you skip over the first tier. You only get into the entry-level tier if you're really strapped for the cash and or you find it for an extremely good price, with the idea that you might upgrade down the road. The third tier is the sweet spot in my opinion. It offers the kind of most functionality for the price. The 4th tier does offer some, nice features, whereas if the price was the same for the 3rd tier and the 4th tier, I'd go for the 4th tier. But I think, you can get in at the 3rd tier, and then if you want to upgrade down the road. So now I want to do a quick little segment on pedals. The Thrustmaster does have sort of a 3 or 4 tier pedal system. I already talked about that the lower tiers, some of them feature the Thrustmaster basic 2 pedal set. Don't like those at all. They're mostly plastic, although I think some have metal pedal covers on them. Skip those. Don't even pick them up if you have the option to. The T3PA GTs and T3PA Pros are acceptable. I think they're fairly good pedals for what they are. If you're buying a bundle with those, generally they should have the conical mod on them. Definitely look to put that on if you're looking to be able to have a better brake feel. But ideally,
nice. But ideally though, yeah. Ideally, on an ideal situation,
I think you should very, very much look to pick up the T-LCM Loadcell pedals. These are the top of the line pedals from Thrustmaster right now. They're very competitively priced at $200. The next kind of comparable thing is the CSL Elite Loadcell kit from Fanatec, and that's around $230. But you have to buy that direct from Fanatec, and the increased cost of shipping can be as much as like $60 depending on what's going on. So really they can be a $280 to $300 pedal set, whereas you can get these on Amazon with, you know, prime shipping, or you can walk into numerous retail stores and pick up Thrustmaster gear. So in general, I kind of like that about Thrustmaster. You can find the TCLMs in a couple of bundles. Some of these are kind of retailer specific bundles, so different retailers will combine this with a servo base and maybe an add-on wheel. The star of the show is, of course, the load cell sensor and the brake pedal. What this does is measure the amount of force you're putting into the pedal, as opposed to potentiometer based pedals, which measure the amount of distance. And measuring force is a lot more realistic. The load cell sensor also generally has a much higher resolution than most of the, I think, 8-bit potentiometers out there. So you're generally going to get like 32,000 steps compared to like the 4,000 steps or 1024 steps that you'll get from a potentiometer. This does also feature adjustable and swappable springs, so you can customize the feel of the brake pedal to your liking. One spec I think a lot of people kind of overlook on the T-LCMs are the fact that the gas and clutch pedals actually utilize Hall sensors. So these are similar magnetic sensors to what is used on the steering shaft of the higher tier wheels, and they basically utilize a magnetic field and changes in a magnetic field to determine changing positions on the pedals. So those don't have an electromechanical component like potentiometers do. Potentiometer based pedals are known to either wear out over time, and things like dust and grease can get into them and cause them to misread or completely fail. So having those Hall effect sensors can hopefully make the pedals last longer.
Like forever?
And generally they also have more resolution, which is a great benefit too. I have seen people utilizing load cell upgrades for pedals like the T3PAs and T3PA GT and T3PA Pros. A lot of those load cell upgrades are upwards of $130. So from my view, if you're going to spend $130, I really recommend you save up and just get the TCLMs, which are, you know, going to retail around $200, because they're a ready-made thing. You can plug them straight into the wheelbase, you can plug them into PC, and you're just going to get all the benefits of much more higher resolution pedals. Now let's shift focus towards wheel rims. I can't go over all the details of all the wheel rims that Thrustmaster produces as add-ons, but the last 2 tiers of the wheelbases do allow you to switch out the wheel rims. What we have here to show is the Rally Wheel Sparco R383 mod. This is a 330 millimeter round rim oriented towards, you know, rally racing. It does feature a suede cover on the rim. You've got a number of buttons. You also have a D-pad on a knob, which also has a push-in switch. You've got the metal shifters. These are not magnetic shifters, so some people might not like the feel of them, but I think they're fine, having used them for a while now. 330 millimeters is on the larger side for rims. They do feature I think the P310 replica wheel also, which is 310 millimeters, and then a lot of their other wheel rims vary from 28 millimeters like this open wheel does up to like 300. So you've got a range of around 280 to 330 that you can play between. You know, if you're doing something like open wheel racing, obviously having a wheel with a lower radius is probably more ideal and more closer to what the real car is using. Another benefit of this open rim is that it is super light, so that helps in terms of being able to make small adjustments very quickly, as you'll notice in like Formula 1 cars. But with the whole lineup of Thrustmaster add-on rims, you can really customize the experience to what you want to do, how you want to drive. If you like a bigger wheel rim, if you like a smaller wheel rim, if you like a more open style wheel rim or a full F1 style wheel rim, you can do that. You can swap them, you can upgrade them, you can change out your wheelbase and keep your wheel rims. You can even do some things like modding wheel rims and using third-party or DIY wheel rims, which I hopefully will talk about in a later video. Yeah, just a lot of flexibility, a lot of upgradability provided from being able to use the Thrustmaster add-ons and the Thrustmaster quick release bases. The last thing I want to talk about is the shifter. This is the TH8A shifter. I really think it is much improved in terms of the feel and the accuracy and the overall metal construction compared to the Logitech driving force shifter. That said, it is more expensive, coming in at around $160, whereas the Logitech shifter is around $60 MSRP. But a big benefit of this is that you can use it directly on PC without any type of third-party adapters, because it does come with a DIN to USB cable, whereas the Logitech driving force can only be used through the Logitech wheelbase unless you buy a third-party adapter. But I really enjoyed my experience using this shifter. It feels really solid when you're moving through gears. The gating is quite nice. People do some mods on them to kind of shorten the throw of the shifter. I will say it is a fairly long shifter, but it feels nice and premium. A lot of metal parts in it compared to the plastic parts of the Logitech driving force shifter. So definitely recommend picking it up. Even as a standalone device, it's a great shifter to have at a reasonable price at around $160. But that is finally it for this video. Thank you guys for sticking around. If you did stick around, give me a driving.
Oh, you driving
in the comments if you're a McLaren fan especially. And let me know if you're going to be watching the 2021 season of Formula 1. And if you're into other race series like WEC or IMSA or Indy, let me know in the comments below. I'm trying to expand and broaden my kind of spectrum of motorsports that I'm into. And really, motorsports is one of the things that has brought me into the sim racing world. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a lot about the Thrustmaster ecosystem. Hopefully I cleared up some of the differences between the different wheels and the feature sets. I tried to put a lot of specs on the screen as well that I didn't necessarily talk about. So, you know, go pause on those specs and you can see the differences between the different wheels. If you have any specific questions about any of these products here, please let me know. I'm going to be putting out a lot more specific videos on these individual products, and I'll also be doing some generic videos, kind of me driving in iRacing, me driving in GT Sport. If you want to see me driving with this setup in a specific game, or get an impression what a specific game feels like, or if it's supported in a game, let me know in the comments below. But that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hit me up on social media. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs down if you did not. I will see you in the next one. Peace.